You see, the communication working group um, is working hard on communication among themselves. So we don't know who has to start. So I do. Yeah.
So, Kirsten, do you want to put the next slide on?
Marek, Kirsten, and I, Sam, we had um, and Salim, Sam, sorry, and Salim, we had a meeting some days before and talk about what is needed to strengthen and to fostering our communication. There was several. Several proposals. So one was concerning the website. We try to build since 2 years, but there was some problems we have facing the organizational and the technical things. But now we are very positive that we will run a website in the next year because Kirsten and me, we find a way to fund the website. It will be financed by the RCE Scotland, Betsy and Kirsten, and our RCE Oldenburger Münsterland. That is for 1 year. So that's one thing. We try to keep the website very simple, and what we are not sure is who should host the website. Our idea is that an institution like the RCE Scotland will host the website, and it shouldn't host it by a private person. So
So,
that's
Detlev, I'm aware that there are a number of slides, and website I think was not in the first slide. So
yes, yes.
shall I move on? Ask Kirsten to move on to the next slide.
I,
And
I hope
the,
that Kirsten will take over
great.
the report about our meeting. And so, hello, Kirsten.
Hello there. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's fine.
Great. Great. Well, thank you so much for sort of setting things up like that, Detlev. That's great. And yeah, just to sort of take a step back, what we'd like to do with this meeting is to revisit the work of the Strategic Working Group on Communications and ask for everyone's thoughts, feedback, ideas on how we make our communications as effective as possible, but doing that in a way that is easy and simple for everyone. We're very aware of the issues around capacity in all of our RCEs. Time and money are in short supply everywhere, it would seem. But basing this on what Betsy has just said about the global picture, this seems very timely that we're talking about this and taking a step back to just make sure that what we're doing is as effective as possible. So we've kind of titled this bit about working together better, which hopefully will help to shape what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to invite you to help us shape things in a way that is, as I say, relevant, meaningful and useful as much as possible for all of our RCE Europe family. And we've got 4 key points that we'd like to discuss with you. The first one is the role of the group, the way it interfaces with other groups, for example. The second is this idea of opportunities for connection. Obviously, communication and networking is at the heart of everything that we do as RCEs. So what are the various opportunities and how can we make the most of those? We'd then like to touch on the idea of the visibility of the network, and that ties in with what Detlev was saying there about the website. How do we make ourselves visible internally to each other, but also externally to other partners and other opportunities? And then finally, what are our next steps to make all of this happen in the short, the medium, and the longer term? So, as always with these discussions, please pop ideas in the chat. As we go along, feel free to pop ideas on the Padlet. We've set up a Padlet for you to think about ideas, because we want everyone, as far as possible, and very mindful of capacity again, in the European family to contribute their thoughts, so that this is something that is robust and co-designed by everyone in a way that makes sense for everyone. So the Padlet is crucial in terms of people who are not here today also having their say and having an opportunity to give us their thoughts. So I'm going to move on to the first question there, which is this idea around the role and function of the Communications Strategic Working Group. And when Detlev, Salim and Marek and I met a couple of weeks ago to discuss this, there were various things that we felt we would love to surface with everyone else. And some of them are outlined here. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is just some of the things that we wanted to pick up with you. So this idea of how do we, as a communications group, interact effectively with the other 4 working groups. Communications is obviously a golden thread that goes through everything, whether it's partnership working or events creation or the work of our amazing youth coordinators. So what is the role of this group in terms of making sure that we are sharing, communicating, helping to raise the profile of the work of those other groups? But also, what is the role of this group, and how can we best interact with other RCEs, with each RCE that is in our European family? Again, thinking about capacity, thinking about what's going to work best for everyone. How can the communications group be that interface between individual RCEs? But also, we started to then think about the bigger picture around the strategic working groups themselves. Essentially, we have 5 groups that in themselves are almost components of a project. So if you were designing a project, you'd be thinking about communications, you'd be thinking about partnerships, you'd be thinking about all the different elements that comprise our strategic working groups. So how do we make sure that those groups are communicating between themselves? So lots of big questions, and what we'd like to do with today's session is to gather your thoughts, and then perhaps at our next Connect session in late January, early February, or whenever suits everyone to have it, is to perhaps share some of the thinking that has come from you to help inform the way forward. So we're essentially today taking a step back to take a step forward, if that makes sense. So that's the first discussion point, and I'm going to pause for a moment and just see if anybody has any initial reactions or thoughts or comments that they'd like to share. I can't see if anyone has raising hands or anything, I'm afraid. I'm so sorry.
Max want to say something?
Max, can you come?
Brief addition, maybe also for the Padlet. I think you ask about role and function, but I think the function should follow the role, and especially the way the questions in the Padlet are phrased are already a lot on the how. So what would be the best way to do it? Well, I think it's also good to have a little bit of a discussion on what exactly is the role, what sort of goals do we have as a network in terms of communication? Is it internal communication? Is it external communication? So sort of this first question on the role and the function, sort of split it into 2. What is the role of communication from the network in the first place? And then the function is how do we shape that, and how does that relate to the working groups, etc. Maybe as an addition to also request input on that first more overarching question.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mac. That's really useful. We'll do that. Any other thoughts on this particular question. It's a big question. So, sorry, was there somebody coming in there? I'm so sorry, I can't see the chat or anyone.
Yeah,
there's nothing in the chat, but just to say in relation to that, you already have a comms strategy.
Yes.
And that sets out the role so far. I mean, maybe that does need to be revisited, and maybe those top line purposes that were decided 2 years ago, maybe they are a bit different, but
yeah, no, that's good. A good idea, Betsy. It's always good to just make sure that we are up to date with our thinking and the purpose of why we do what we do. Are there any thoughts in terms of how this working group should interface with the other working group? Any initial thoughts on how we can add value or what we can do to build mechanisms that ensure this is done in a really simple but effective way?
Marek, please.
Okay, so maybe I will comment. So I think that if we start to discuss with working groups and what working groups shall do, so we can discuss 1 more year without coming to very concrete conclusions. Working groups, naturally, it is important to make our work more precise and to discuss also on working groups, but I would be rather oriented to some concrete effects we would like to have, because up to now we are meeting, we have from time to time some webinars. However, what would be important is to decide what shall we do in order to have very concrete effects. And for example, here, if we start with communication strategic working group, so our communication working group can be very important just in starting some activities. For example, first, because it is about communication and communication is everything. So first thing, I think that we shall have a place to have regular information on activities of our RCEs, even very short ones. If we have a web page, for example, so on this web page, we can put information even every month. For example, our center, RCE South Poland, publishes a newsletter every month. So every month we have at least 1 or 2 things to report. And I think that it is similar thing with other RCEs. So that means first concrete objective for our communication strategic working group would be to decide on the system of gathering basic information on our important activities, like, for example, a conference or some new idea, and promote it internally among our partners of our RCE Europe network, and also outside. If we will have website, so it could be something like news on the website, if before, so we can think how to do it. So it is one important thing. Second important thing, it is what we will discuss later, is already to decide on some activities for next year, maybe not too many activities, but to identify things of a common interest. Like, for example, before this meeting, we mentioned biodiversity, maybe 2, 3, 4 such topics. And then communication strategic working group can work on collecting feedback from partners who is interested in this, and also participate in decision making, how we can collaborate for given area. So therefore, I would say that first, maybe we will think what concrete results, what concrete visibility effects you would like to achieve. And then communication working group will start, because we have to collect information, discuss among ourselves. And then, for example, if idea would develop, so a group for, let us say, funding and projects can have a look how what we are doing jointly can be translated into a, let us say, European project.
Thank you very much,
said,
Marek. Thank you very much, because we have a lot of to do and time is running. I
Yes.
interrupt you and want to draw your attention to the Padlet questions. under the first part. There's one question: what would make it easy for individual RCEs to interact with the communication strategic working group? That's really important for us, and I think it combines what Marek and Max mentioned. So the easy ways to communicate with each other RCEs. That's what Marek says. It should be concrete and it should have effect. And we would be happy if you could share some ideas with us. Please put it into the Padlet. And the second is that Max made an important difference. What is our direction of communication? Is it more internal or more external communication? I think, and as I understand our discussion a couple of weeks before, Marek, Kirsten, and Salim, we focus now on the internal communication and try after the first steps to think about external communication. But first, it is internal communication among the RCEs in Europe. That's my understanding. I hope I'm on the right track.
Yes. When we wrote our original strategy, which we'll share again, obviously, there were those two flows of communication were at the heart of it, the inter-RCE communication, but also our external facing presence. So, but as Detlef has indicated, we need to be sure that we're communicating properly internally in order to inform effective communications externally. So they're not exclusive of each other, but we need to strengthen the internal one and the internal processes perhaps first, whilst thinking about the external methodologies that we're going to use. I'm just very aware of time, folk, so I'd like to move us on, if that's okay, to our next discussion point, which is this idea of opportunities for connection. And there have been a couple of discussions recently around these Connect meetings themselves in terms of their structure and particularly their duration. And we'd like to get your thoughts on a proposal that has been mooted by several RCEs to perhaps lengthen these meetings to 1 hour 30 minutes when we have them monthly. What we're finding, as you've probably noticed, is that we run out of time. There isn't enough time in 1 hour to cover all of the things that we'd like to do, particularly if we're having input from an RCE on their work and then trying to cram in updates from the strategic working groups. So what we'd like to propose is that if everyone is happy to do so, we certainly can trial having 90-minute meetings instead of 60-minute meetings. But again, it would be great to get your thoughts in the Padlet, and we will go with the majority vote on this. But I think we can all agree that it is very difficult to cover everything that we need to cover in the time that we've given ourselves so far. The second point we've got here is around in-person meetings. And what I'd like to do is to hand back to you, Detlef, talk a little bit about this idea of the sub-regional. Pan-regional speaks for itself. We're talking about the kind of in-person gatherings that Peter Reichenbach so very kindly hosted at RCE Ruhr back in 2024. But the sub-regional is an interesting concept. So Detlef, would you like to share a little bit more about that, please?
Yes, I will do. First, I think it's important to have a pan-regional European RCE meeting next year. And we are looking for RCE who will host the meeting. And we know that the European-wide meetings for many RCEs are too expensive, or they have not the time and the resources to take part in. But we we all can only can underline that's so important to meet in person. It's and everybody who attended a RCE meeting was really inspired by the meetings. We would be happy if there's one RCE who will host the next meeting. That's a pan-regional meeting. The sub-regional meeting, that's an idea to use more opportunities to connect the RCEs in person. There could be occasions like Marek used. He was in Portugal, and so the RCE, Polish RCE in the Portuguese RCE met. That's great. Or we have conferences or meetings we organize because of our work or our project. Then we should invite other RCEs which are perhaps nearby or close to the topic. Thirdly, we could organize RCE meetings with RCEs which are not that far away. So, for example, our RCE in Oldenburger Münster, in the northern part of Germany, is much more close to RCE Frisian and to the Danish RCEs than to our German RCE in the south or in Austrian RCEs. But the German RCEs like Munich or Nuremberg could easily arrange meetings with Austria and the Switzerland RCEs. So that's the idea of sub-regional RCEs to strengthen the collaboration.
Great. Thanks so much, Detlef.
Thank you very much, Sophie.
Sorry.
Only for Kirsten, Sophie wrote in the chat that she thinks that's a great idea.
Fantastic. Yes, there are obviously natural geographical delineations, and I know that in the past groups have been formed. For example, here in the UK and the Republic of Ireland, we have met, although not for a long time, but we have met to look at communalities and opportunities for collaboration within our islands. So yes, thoughts on this, please, would be great. Other comments that were made in our meeting included the idea of perhaps, in order to help with the pan-regional meetings, could each RCE perhaps contribute a small amount of money to the host RCE to make it easier? All thoughts are very, very welcome as to how we do this, tying in with what Betsy said earlier about this idea of decentralization. We have ideas, we have creativity, so can we use that to come up with things that would work for everyone in our European family? Any other comments before I go on to the next discussion point? Please do pop things in the Padlet, that's what it's there for. But anything in the chat that people would like?
Marek, Samuel, and Max put some ideas in the Padlet. Thank you very much for this.
Fantastic. Keep them coming. Okay, if I may, I'll go on to the next discussion point, which is around the visibility of the RCE Europe network.
I'm sorry, I wrote something into the chat.
Sorry, say again.
Sorry, I wrote 2 comments into the chat because you said you're open for comments.
Of course, yes, please. Sorry, who's speaking? I can't see you. I'm so sorry.
That's Sophie, Kirsty.
Hi, Sophie.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Sophie.
So first of all, I don't quite understand how could we connect with each other, because we don't have the email addresses from each other, and also I don't quite know which RCEs are around Munich, and what's even the closest one. I think Nuremberg is, but like, isn't there a way that we could connect with each other? Because how exactly do you imagine us to meet if we don't have the email addresses?
So this is something that we'd like to share with you today. We've had a couple of ideas around this in terms of how we can do this, if that's okay. I'm going to stop sharing the slides in a moment and talk through a mechanism that we've designed that hopefully will help with that.
Okay, thanks.
Is that okay? It's something that we've also been thinking about in the absence of a global website. How do we know who everyone is? Absolutely, it's a really
Yeah,
good
that's
point.
great. Thanks. Thanks.
Um,
And just my second comment is that you said that maybe every RCE could support the hosting RCE with a little bit of money. Unfortunately, we are very tight, and I think according to like our association laws from our sponsors, we are not allowed to give money away to other RCEs. So like, isn't there another way if or isn't yeah to support this those meetings if an RCE is just not capable of paying money?
course, this is just one suggestion. These are all just suggestions that we can discuss, and please put that in the Padlet to say that your funding regulations prohibit you from doing that, because that's
Okay.
something that we need to know about. So, are there other mechanisms? Can we find a funder? Can we find a sponsor? These are all things that we need to think about, and if there are ideas, please put them in the Padlet for us to consider. But it's great to know about the constraints as well that you've just identified, Sophie. So thank you for sharing that, because that is so important to know that there are physical and legal barriers to this for some RCEs. We're all very different, which is why we need to connect and share. Um, okay, so I'll just quickly talk about this in terms of the creation of content for the website. As Detlev said earlier, RCE Scotland and RCE Oldenburg and Munsterland are going to put up some small amounts of funding for the first year of the website. We will host it in a non-private account. It'll be independent of anyone's particular own email address, etc. In terms of the content creation, I'm going to share something with you in a moment that will help hopefully with what Sophie's just highlighted, but also in terms of bringing together the network a little bit better. But one of the things that we've found is the ongoing management of the website. The capacity within our network is obviously very limited. And I'd like to acknowledge RCE Friesland, who have offered to help the communications working group with the very kind offer of some capacity from their team. So, Max, I wonder if you'd like to say a little bit more about that.
No, not directly. Yeah, my camera is not entirely working today. No, I mean, Sanne is also here. She's been doing a great job
Sanne.
on her own communications team. So where we can help also on the European part, that's definitely possible. Yeah, but also, I mean, this is in line with also the support that yourself and Detlef and the others of the working group have also put in. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Sanne, we're really looking forward to meeting with you whenever it's convenient for you to look at how we can work with you in a way that adds value to what you want to achieve as well. So please do let us know when would suit for that.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely will.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you. So in terms of taking things forward with the website, Salim and I are going to be meeting this Friday to look at the technical side of things, to start the ball rolling with creating the shell that we will then populate. And I'll be in touch with talking about that in due course. So we're very aware of time. We're running very, very late, I'm afraid.
Samuel asked in the chat, is there any possibility for the RCEs in Europe website now to be embedded in the RCE global network New website. No, I don't think so. And from my point of view, it's really not helpful because the data safety and the communication regulations of the RCE service centers are so strict that we thought that's a good idea to have our own website to be a little bit more free to publish our content.
Yes, I think it's a good point to make, Sam. But I think I agree with Detlef certainly, and I hope others do too, that having our own website affords us a degree of freedom and flexibility that we just wouldn't have if it was embedded.
But Betsy promised to follow this idea up at the RCE Service Center, and I think we could do an own website and have a sort of publication hub on the website of the RCE Service Center. Why not?
Yes, I think there is still ambition on the RCE global website. I was speaking to the coordinator of that at the conference in Japan to have the global map that we had before, which had all of the RCEs, all the profiles are on there. There's a map where you can see where RCEs are. I think that is still an ambition of this website, but it certainly wouldn't be sufficient to negate the need for our own website. Sam, you got your hand up.
Sorry, very quickly on that one to react. Maybe the question was not sufficiently clear. No, I was obviously, and you're putting a lot of effort on this, and I also think that it's essential that we have our own standalone website as RCEs in Europe. I was mostly trying to ask, willing to know if once it's running and operational, it could be also visibilized in a way or embedded as well, not instead of, but as well on the global RCE website, so that there is a direct link taking.
How do they interact?
Yes,
exactly.
That would certainly be an ambition. I know that RCE Americas would like to do the same.
Yeah.
I was speaking to some of the new RCE in San Francisco at the conference, and they're hoping to do the same with their website. So thank you. That's really, really good point. It's definitely worth having that discussion with Ave in the Global Service Centre. Okay, we're nearly there, folks. A couple of other questions which are on the Padlet. I'll leave webinars for now because that ties in with the events strategic working group. That's their bag, but we wanted to flag this up. But the idea of a newsletter, this came from Salim. Is this something that people would welcome twice per year, containing content from RCEs, and also social media presence? Should we have one? If so, which platform do we go with, or platforms, bearing in mind all the issues that we've already highlighted around capacity and time? So thoughts on the Padlet, please, that would be wonderful. And the priorities. What are the ones in the short term? What are the medium term? And what are the longer term? Again, if you can pop your ideas onto the Padlet, that would be wonderful. So I'm going to stop sharing what I'm showing just now, and I'm going to hand over to Marek to just quickly talk us through the idea of the matrix, not the one where you take the pills and disappear into a cyber-dominated world, although who knows, we might be moving towards that. But this hopefully will go some way toward addressing what Sophie raised, but also addressing this idea of content and what everyone is doing. So Marek, can I hand over to you, please?
It's okay.
And Marek, just to say, we're slightly behind time, so we're trying to try and get a bit from the others as well.
Yeah, so very shortly, so we discussed a possibility of having a matrix. So here, his proposal of Kirsten to collect in a kind of a free form basic information from our RCEs, just to have a kind of overview what we are doing. I think it is very important we collaborate for so long time and we do not know each other very well. So it would be very good to just collect, even in short form, this information. What I suggest additionally, if you can scroll it down, this table. So please scroll this table down. Oh, not waiting till all centers will put information and then we analyze this information. I would propose also a kind of a shortcut to propose some topics. It is just and ask each center to put yes or no if these topics are in their, let us say, main interest. If we will see several yes, for example, for education for sustainable development provided by botanical gardens or by waste management companies, or for example, skills for energy transfer, something like this, it would be very important signal that we can try to arrange something around this topic. So therefore, just finishing, I would suggest that we, as a kind of, test, we launch this table and we ask all European centers to put even preliminary data to the table, just as a kind of appetizer to start.
Thanks so much, Marek. So what you've got there in column B is just a sample of what it could look like. This was just ideas off the top of our heads in terms of some of the content that we could perhaps gather. But certainly contact name, contact email, web address will go some way towards helping us to network. Now, we do have obviously a database of email addresses and names. What I'd like to do is to obviously share that with everyone, but we need to just make sure that we are in compliance with GDPR when we do that. So I will send out an email to everyone asking if they are happy for their details to be shared more widely. And those that do give permission, I will make sure that their details are shared with the network more widely. But this table will go on our Google Drive, and I'll send a link to it out with the minutes, and hopefully everyone can start putting in their ideas. So the idea is that it's a two-way communication tool. You can put in things that you need in this part here, key asks that you need, and then you can share as well. So it becomes a two-way thing. Okay, any comments or thoughts on that before I stop sharing it and hand back to Betsy? I'll take the silence as being a golden thing and stop sharing. Okay, lovely. I'm so sorry for rattling through everything, folk. There's been a lot to share, but hopefully we'll get some great data on the Padlet. I'm going to put the slides back up if that's okay, and hand back to you, Betsy, for our final part of today.
Hi, sorry, I still have a question.
Of course, apologies.
Yeah, so basically my first question is, could you maybe send us a reminder and like a deadline until when we have to fill out this form on Google Drive?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. And the second thing is that who is evaluating the Padlet? Like, who's in charge and what will happen to the results? Will the results be, I don't know, shared internally with us? Because I would be interested in what you conclude about the texts that we wrote.
Definitely. So the data will be collated by the communications team. We'll leave the Padlet open, so it'll be still accessible after this meeting for other RCEs who weren't here today to contribute their thoughts as well. But what we'll do is at the next Connect meeting like this, which Betsy's going to share some proposed dates with you in a moment, we will revisit all of the comments that have been shared today and pull together next steps. So this is a sort of part one of part two will be in late January, early February. Does that help?
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
No problem at all. But the Padlet will stay open. We're not going to close it because We know what it's like. Sometimes you go away and you think of things afterwards as well. Okay, Betsy, I'm going to hand back to you if that's okay. The last wee while.
Fantastic. And I would just like to say thank you to all of those, all four of you in the communications group for putting the thinking into this and kickstarting our thinking as well, because I think all the points that have been, all the questions that have been asked are really important ones. So I hope that everybody will take the time to fill in the Padlet, and perhaps, Kirsten, when you do send out notes from this meeting, as Sophie says, putting dates against things so that, not too soon, because we all know it's Christmas coming up, but a date in January so that you have a full filled in Padlet with information from lots of RCEs